Good evening, everybody. I'm really excited and honored to share with you our next Changemaker honoree for 2021. And her name is Michelle Speppard. And Michelle was introduced to me by my business partner, Jim Shelvy, a couple of years ago. Michelle, we've chatted a few times. We've never met. I'd like you to introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So my name is Michelle Speppard. Where I'm from down here, I'm also known as Mama Mish. I'm actually, speaking of down here, I'm actually living in Melbourne, Australia. I'm originally from St. Louis. Jim and I actually are old high school classmates. We've known each other since early days. And my pronouns are she and her, and I'm a trans woman who does a lot of advocacy down here in Australia.
Great. So you were nominated as an honoree Changemaker because clearly of the work you do in your community. I mean, you are an inspiration. I know you host a couple of shows. You do your community work. You really help people with the transition, and you've shared personally with me some of the stories that you faced as a child growing up, which were really, I mean, man, they really touched my heart. So could you go into a little bit deeper about the work you do and the impact you make?
Sure. So, look, I've been dealing with my gender identity stuff since I was a young kid. Like I said, I've known Jim since I was a very young boy. We were in Cub Scouts together. I went through all my different trials and stuff as a young adult, even as well, there when I was in America. Dealing with coming in, coming out, going back in the closet is so many times. But eventually, I went back in the closet for a number of years and then had an opportunity to move to Australia. So I did. It wasn't until I was 36 that I came out as trans officially. It was something that I actually really struggled with myself, with dealing with a lot of the stereotypes and all that had happened towards society. So I really had no choice but to kind of come out. It was just something I just couldn't continue hiding anymore. But I found that when I did finally come out, no matter how much you did over the years in my career in IT of 20 years just became nothing. Nobody really was interested at all. And so I had to kind of start from scratch. I had nothing. I couldn't start. I had nothing to start with. Right. So
Right.
the only work I was offered was doing landscape gardening or cleaning airplane cabins or cleaning, hotel rooms. Nothing. It was a manual labor, earning a pittance. So after I came out, I really had to reevaluate what it was I was doing and what kind of work I was going to do. So an opportunity to do a lot of public speaking, and eventually came in to be interviewed on a radio show that I eventually took over as the host and was nominated for awards for, and doing a lot of speaking gigs for many different places. Down here, we have the AFL, which is the Australian Football League, which is
Mhm.
maybe our professional version of, say, the NFL or MLB. And so I'm doing a lot of work within them at the high end level, to working with a lot of the different clubs, working with different other sporting groups, whether they're cricket and rugby, but also working with many corporate spaces, and even founding funding to go and focus on highlighting the issues facing the gender diverse community. So many people believe that as a trans woman that you were a gay man before, and I
Right.
wasn't. I actually was living a very heterosexual life, being a parent, being a husband, all those things. But our relationship fell apart, and I had to go on this journey. But for me, I've eventually won awards for my work around highlighting the barriers and challenges facing gender diverse people and LGBT people as a whole. When I say LGBT, I mean LGBTIQA plus. I don't mean to not highlight anybody specifically, but I'm just saying it shorthanded as in this conversation.
Sure.
Um, and so I get pulled into many different conversations around policies and work. And so the current work I do is in the transport industry here. We have a very big transport industry here in the state of Victoria that I'm in, and I'm live in the city of Melbourne. And a lot of the work I do, I'm the only trans woman within this space. And so I'm writing policies and resources to help people with their journeys as well.
That's great. Could you, I mean, you've shared with me, and I'm just wondering if you'd be willing to share with the viewers tonight some of the challenges that you had in your transition, I mean, you shared some stories about being like spit on the bus, and like
Yeah.
it just really like, and maybe through your stories, people might be a little softer or kinder to each other. Can you share some of those? Thank you.
And you know, in a lot of those stories, you're revisiting them often. And I'm somebody who doesn't focus on the negative. I'm always, you know, I will always find a way to be as positive as I can and find you know, if it becomes a barrier, I see it as a challenge, and I'll say challenge
Sure.
accepted, and I won't succumb to it. But for me, during that time, look, my ex and I, we had issues before I came out, so we didn't split because I was trans. We actually had other issues that were going on. But after I did come out, you know, there were issues of being, you know, rocks and bricks and rubbish and stuff being thrown at me on the front lawn because I was coming out. I was banned from seeing my kids at the school, even though I was still able to see my kids and have the time with them that I had. I was told that I couldn't actually take them to school or attend any of the parenting programs that were like Dad's Day or anything like that. I'd go on public transport and I'd be spat on, shoved, outed. People would be like, "Look, you know, look, it's a man. I'm telling you, look at its arms, look at its hands."
Gosh.
You'd look at people and be like, "Can I help you?" And they'd actually shut up because you're 6'3", and so they don't want to start any shit with you to begin with. But you know, I've been at a public space on a tram stop. I've been knocked down and spat on because I'm trans, and I was just trying to figure out where I'm going on a map. I didn't hardly say anything. Nobody came to my rescue or anything. There was a group of women that had a go at me on a public transport, called me a pervert and a pedophile on public transport as I'm going home, and not even talking to anybody and just being myself. As you can see, I don't present in a way that's overly you know, sexualized or anything. I look no different than probably any other cis woman that's out there. And by cis, I mean CIS, as someone who identifies as the gender they were assigned at birth. And I just unfortunately have dealt with so many of those things. And even though I work in the transport industry, even today, I still get, you know, outed and yelled at and spat on and all kinds of things. So it's just about keeping going, keeping your head up, and being focused on you know, the goals that you want to achieve within this space.
That's beautiful, and just really admire you for continuing your path and honoring who you are. Could you like just maybe take a glimpse into the future 5 years from now, and someone says the name Michelle Speppard? What type of impact would you like to make? Is it with kids? Is it with you know, the political structure? Where do you see yourself in 5 years as a change maker?
Oh God. Everyone keeps telling me I should go for politics down here. That would be very interesting. I do see myself actually leading the way when it comes to making a massive change within the employment space. When we deal with a lot of different recruitment organizations and just D&I spaces within corporate areas. Unfortunately, it's a conversation that it's still uncomfortable. I would like to actually change the conversation and split that sexual diverse component to the gender diverse component to understand the inequity between the different issues that face each different letter, because people don't understand that we're a community of communities, not one specific community. And so I want to actually make a massive impact on that and change the way that we're even recruiting and how we're engaging further communities. So for example, let's say, I'm trying to remember back in America, a big company, say Bank of Australia, for example, let's say they want to engage with diverse individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Well, instead of actually just putting a CV up, let's actually go and saying, hey, we see these moms, or we see this diverse individual who is struggling to understand the language we're trying to look for within our CVs. Let's hold expos. Let's bring people together. Let's actually engage diverse communities to come in and actually do it. So, for example, Larry, we might have somebody who looks like you with a background such as yourself, or Jim, who's in a diversity capacity within an organization. Say it's Bank of America, say it's any other organization it's there. You are then told to write a policy on how to engage someone like me without having lived experience to understand. And that's what's happening, is that you as somebody who's then told to do this. So we need to actually engage those of us who have the lived experience to help you create those policies and
Sure.
engage those wider communities that are struggling to connect with.
That's great. You know, so many of our change makers that we featured came from, what many would perceive disadvantaged or challenged backgrounds, and they've been able to pivot that and then help others. But I think, you are unique because it's your gender. It's like, it's the inside. It wasn't that, you didn't have food or electricity growing up. It didn't have that. Those were external factors that clearly can be devastating, that many have, but yours was an internal something. So is there any advice or tips you want to share? Like, how do you stay positive in such a place of that could be just darkness? And how do you?
It's not easy. Look, my kids helped me get through it. It's connecting with colleagues through the years who understand and just listen. I get a lot of help from Jack Daniels, just those sorts of things. But my big thing as well is I love the goals that are kicked. So, for example, I myself, I've not had certain surgeries. I haven't had facial surgery. I haven't had any other surgeries to then meet society's demands of how I should present myself as a woman. So what I do is I really try to understand. I really seek to understand what it is that needs to change. So instead of making myself palatable to the wider society, saying that I should go and change my jaw, I should go and change my brow, I should go and change my nose, I'm not doing that because I shouldn't have to do that. Right. So that's one of the things
Right.
is I inspire a lot of people because I'm not changing any of that. And I refuse to, because if you can't accept me for how I'm presenting to you right now, then that's not good enough. Then I don't want
Sure.
to work for you anyway. And so I'm getting messages from people from Ireland, from Russia, I've got stuff from Scotland, I've got stuff from Iceland, I got somebody from Pennsylvania recently. So for all the work that I do, and it's really exciting to see that that's how wide of a footprint I've started creating, because I'm basically saying,
Yeah.
well, fuck you, this is me, and I'm not meeting your standards. And a lot of women out there pretty much say the same thing, because that's what also pisses a lot of cis women off, because trans women come in to try and meet these expectations that most cis women don't want to meet. And so I say, fine, I'm not doing it either. And that's the stuff that gets me going, is
Yeah.
just that seeing everybody
Sure.
going, yes, yes.
Sure. Well, like I said, I haven't met you, but I just, on a personal level, want to share the impact that you've had with me, because um, you've have inspired me and given me more permission to be me. Because through you, you're giving yourself permission to be you in your own beautiful way that you are, and that's the impact that you've had on me. I really admire you, and just I'm so glad that we've had the opportunity to connect. But before we end this interview, I'd like to ask you what you might say to someone who wants to make a change in their community, or wants to make a change within themselves, but feels like maybe, well, I don't have the time, or I don't have the money, or I don't know where to start. What type of wisdom or guidance might you share with them?
Well, if you basically say, I don't have the money or the time, I did this with nothing. Like, when I came out, Larry, I had, just to give you an example, I was working for one of the top 4 accounting firms in their digital offerings department, right? So we were working on a lot of new products and stuff. So I went from an income here of about maybe $90,000, right? So when I lost everything, I was barely making 30. I had nothing. I couldn't put food on the table. I could barely buy 2-minute noodles for my kids. Mind you, I was at the point of committing suicide. I actually went and planned it. I was going to have a last weekend with my
Wow.
daughter, but I had a massive shift in my mindset. And I realized I had too many motherfuckers to prove wrong. And I went ahead, and I was funny because I had this shift, and the next day, and nobody knew, because I'm somebody who's not pride. I don't have massive pride, but I was somebody who was like, nobody wants to hear how sad and lonely you are, or how much you're struggling. People just don't care. They'll tell you how your day is, but they're only doing it because it's a society obligation, right?
Sure.
So the next day after that, I made the decision. I said, I need to do this. And mind you, when I was going for coffees, anytime anybody would pay for coffee, I took it. I had, like, for 2 weeks, I'd probably have $5 to last me, and I was making it stretch as much as I could. Um, it was not easy, but I kept going because I was focused on what it is I was trying to achieve. And you know what? You set yourself a little goal. You set yourself the
Yeah.
next goal, and it goes from there. And each year, as I was doing it, I was just networking, network. LinkedIn is an amazing platform to use. Start sharing stories, talking about the things you're working on. Get people to put recommendations on your LinkedIn profile. It started building each year that I was doing my business, right? Up until 2019,
Mhm.
my business is still growing, but up until 2019, I was growing and doubling my income I was making on top of the work that I was doing. So I was still going, and I eventually found full-time work, but I was 3,000, 6,000, 9,000. I leapt to 15,000. By the time the end of 2019 had come, right
Right.
leading up to COVID impact, just my small little business, all of a sudden it was turning over just over 30 something thousand. And here I was driving a promotional vehicle from BMW as a thank you for highlighting their inadequacy for diversity and a misunderstanding. And this was from a gay man who I had to basically put in his place because he didn't
Wow.
understand.
Right.
So it just comes down to networking and being driven. And each year it goes on and builds from there. Yes, I've had a small setback because of COVID, but you know what? I shifted to online. And
Right.
you know, when I'm doing online training, I always joke and say, I may or may not be wearing pants and there may or may not be a bottle of scotch with me, but I'm still doing it. I'm still going. And
That's great.
and you know what? There are times that next thing you know, when you start rising up, you'll start seeing other people who are in the same position you were. And you know what? If you have the $5, I believe in karma. If you have the $5, invest in people and buy them a coffee because you never know who will
Love
come back,
that. I love that.
and actually, be an ally. So I have some people actually coming back and going, Michelle, you actually helped me with this. And so I want to bring you in and have somebody hear the stories that you're willing to talk about because you have such a different perspective on all
Right.
of it. And just always use kindness.
That's beautiful. Well, Michelle, I want to thank you so much for being part of Changemakers 2021. As I said, I admire you. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your personal journey. And I look forward to connecting with you in the future and sharing part of your growth. So thanks again for being with us. Jim,
Thank
back to
you.
you. Thank you. All right. I think I stopped recording.